Hello everybody, it's Thistle and Verse, and I'm going to go way back. We're going to hop in the Wayback Machine and talk about November and December of 2020 and what I read. I don't know why this has been sitting in like my script slush pile for so long, but now we're going to talk about it. I just remember struggling to read during those 2 months, and I just remember being so checked out at one point. Like I was like rushing through books trying to get like 2021 reading goals completed. And it was just kind of a messy 2 months, honestly. So we're going to start off with Hoodoo by Ronald L. Smith. This is a middle grade horror about Hoodoo Smith, a meek African-American boy living in 1930s Alabama who comes from a long line of hoodoo workers. He kind of sticks out because he's the only one in the family who can't work magic, and he was born with like a heart-shaped birthmark on his face. And he's just kind of like going about his business, living his life, when he starts having dreams of a malevolent stranger who leaves him foreboding messages in his sleep. And he has to figure out who the stranger is, what he wants, and how to get rid of him. I think this is Ronald L. Smith's middle grade debut, and there are parts of it that I just really enjoyed. I love the atmosphere and the creepy imagery. I thought those were wonderful. I thought that was stellar. The stranger, the antagonist, has a couple different incarnations throughout the book, and he's threatening and creepy in every form that he takes. I thought that Hudu was an endearing protagonist. He's kind of scrawny. He's like not good at a lot of like games or sports or things like that, and so he gets picked on. I liked his relationship with his crush, Bunny. Bunny's not quite a tomboy, but she's like athletic. She's like good at a lot of the things that Hudu isn't. She's really good at like whittling. And even though Hudu's not someone who can really like add anything in the way of like muscle, like she's got her brothers looking out for her. Honestly, Bunny could probably throw better punches than Hudu. He does still like try to like stick up for her when and where he can. And even when Bunny does outshine him in certain skills, Hudu doesn't like twist his like embarrassment into a resentment of Bunny. He's honestly a very sweet kid. And so I like the relationship. So this book really did have all the ingredients to be a 5-star read for me, but I had some issues with the story. If I was reading this as a preteen, like I don't know if I would have noticed some of the critiques I'm going to get into, but as an adult, they were kind of hard for me to ignore. So possibly like the worst thing was that I was really unclear on who the target audience was for this book. It seemed like Smith assumed that readers are going to know next to nothing about life in the South, and he had Hudu constantly explaining terms to the reader, like almost every 5 pages or so something would come up, which I didn't like. I felt like it disrupted the flow of the story. I didn't really feel like it added anything. And like the way that it's presented, it's always like Hudu says like, oh, like that's an outhouse. If you didn't know what that is, here's the definition of an outhouse. And it just seemed so weird, like, and that's the only time Hudu addresses the reader. And also, it just seemed weird when they felt like things needed to be explained. So for example, this is a book about Hudu. This is a book set in 1930s Alabama, and like we're never really explicitly told, like at the beginning, where the setting and the time period is. I felt like it was like over-explaining in places that didn't need it, and then things that the reader might have needed context on, there wasn't really a whole lot there. And also, the ending felt a bit rushed. Hudu's father kind of left, like no one knows where he is, and he learns some information about his dad, and it's like some very heavy, very impactful information that I thought it was going to take him a lot more time to process, and it felt like it was just like he just heard it and he just like hit the ground running, and that seemed like not very realistic to me. And I will say that the world felt flat in some ways. It felt like all the side characters' lives revolved around Hudu. I think that if Smith had put some more detail into the side characters, put some more detail into like building up the setting, I think this would have easily been a 5-star read for me. As it is, I really liked it. I'm really loving middle grade horrors. So the next book I read was Bayou Magic by Jewell Parker Rhodes. This is a middle grade fantasy set in Louisiana. It's about Maddie, who's the youngest daughter in her family, and she goes to spend the summer with her eccentric bayou-dwelling grandma. and she just learns about her family's Creole history and life in the bayou and a little bit of magic. Content warnings for parental abuse. It doesn't get very graphic, but I do think this is a middle grade that's intended for like a little older audience. Also, in terms of the pacing, it was slower paced, it's very atmospheric, and the writing is like poetic and descriptive in a way that I don't see a lot in middle grade. And like, I love it as an adult, and I think it's definitely within children's like reading ability. Like, I don't think the words of the sentences were too complicated, but I do think it is for like for a more mature middle grade reader. So in terms of the magic system here, it's like very nebulous. There isn't really a whole lot of rules to it. It's just due to Maddie's bloodline, she can make certain things happen and she can communicate with animals in certain ways. It's not like the centerpiece of the story. It's kind of like these small interventions that happen, and it becomes a much bigger component at the end of the story. So there are mermaids in here. In the synopsis, it's kind of unclear if they're ever actually going to show up on page, but like the mermaids are here. They do exist. We do see them. There is a Mami Wada spirit here. This was one where like it was really slow going for me. Like my brain was mush, and like I said, it is a slower read. But this was still like a read that I really, really loved. And I think it's because it's just a lot of tropes that I like. I like the whole, you know, being sent to live off with the weird relative, the characters bond, and younger character learns something about themselves. And there's sort of like the coming of age. I love stories about coming of age in nature and like nature-based magic. This story kind of made me think of a middle grade like epic fantasy, Juniper by Monica Furlong, by white authors, but for some reason, just like that collision of tropes really gets me. Next up is Power and Magic Volume 2, edited by Joe McGill. This is a comic anthology about queer witches, and the focus is on women and or feminine people. This volume included content warnings at the back of the book, and I did like this volume more than the previous one. In terms of like comic shorts, some of them are literally like a page. It's just kind of like giving you like a vibe and a feeling. And then some of them are actually like more little stories. And I think the art styles in these anthologies tended to be more on the like sketchy side, less realistic side. And I think I just like this volume more because there was more action-y stories. There were more stories in this anthology, so it was just like more for me to enjoy. I think the first one was a little quieter, a little slower. In general, the protagonists for the anthology tend to skew young, like I would say teens to early 30s. Also, the magic in both anthologies varies a lot. Like sometimes we don't really even see it on page. It's just like about someone talking about being a witch. Sometimes the magic is just kind of like an allegory for coming of age or something about your gender, or it's just kind of happening in the background. Like it's not always like big, grand, magical displays. So my three favorite stories from this anthology was Hot Review by Seth Smith, which is about a witch who reviews restaurants, and she stumbles upon a patisserie that quickly becomes her favorite, and she wants to meet the chef and like give her feelings to the chef, and the chef won't meet her, and so she kind of like passive aggressively does some reviews so that she can speak to the chef herself. I just thought this was cute and funny, like the main character's persistence and how she decided that she was going to get the chef's attention. The chef is like very high strung and prideful, so that was funny. Then there's Something in the Water by R.B. Essex. This was one I really, really liked. It's about a witch who's waiting for her girlfriend at their favorite restaurant, but a nearby diner isn't too fond of witches. It's kind of about the passive-aggressive go-between the two have while the witch is waiting for her girlfriend to show up. And passive-aggressive face-off is like kind of funny, like the witch isn't really supposed to be using magic, but she's like sneaking it anyway. And I loved her girlfriend when she finally arrived. She's like super tall, like everyone who sees her just falls in love with her. And the girlfriend's a sea witch, and I love all like the nautical details in her design. And then last favorite is Moon Eater by Lorena Reyes. This is about a destructive creature who's disrupting tourism, and it's up to one witch to protect the economic security of her town. I'm blanking on where the story is set. I think it's somewhere in Southeast Asia, but I just love the art style for like the Moon Eater. There's like an art change in the beginning where they're showing the creation story and then it flips to real life, and I love the artwork for the creation story. I love nature stories, and this one was like a very touching story about like living in a town that depends on tourism and what happens when your like economy depends on like people from the outside coming in, having this thing that like is sustaining you, and how that can be like exploitative and limiting. So I enjoyed it. The art's all black and white, and there's a variety of styles, and yep. Next up is Record Keeper by Agnes Gomillion. This is an adult sci-fi about this like post-apocalyptic Earth where there really is only like 4 countries now. The United States is kind of not really even the whole United States. It's kind of just like the Northeast. And it's split up into, what was it? Lowlanders, Playskins, and I think it was the Upperlanders. I forget. It's like a 3-tiered caste system, basically. And the protagonist, Arika Cobain, is part of like the lowest class, the Congo. They're the laboring class. They work in the fields, and their memories are periodically scrambled, like every couple of years or so. So they don't really have family units. There isn't really a collective history, but there are some members of the Congo who are record keepers. They go to these schools where they're basically indoctrinated to look down on the laborers and to aspire to be like I think they're modeled after the British, the like white, like upper caste people. And basically there's a power struggle coming up. There's this seed that is going to like revolutionize agriculture, and Arika has to like pick a side on if she's going to either back the seed or oppose the seed. And I honestly can't give you a whole lot of details about the story. I feel bad because Miss WC Reader, the blogger, swears by this book. She's the main reason that I like moved it up on my TBR to pick it up, and my brain was just fried when I was reading it. Like there's obviously so many layers going on here, and it was blurred by River Solomon, and you know River Solomon doesn't write anything shallower than like the 10-foot deep end of the pool. So if River Solomon's blurbing it, I know that's brilliant, but my brain was just not here while I was trying to read it, and so I'm gonna try and reread it at some point. Something I liked about this is that Arika is a very dynamic protagonist. Like, she was very rebellious as a kid, and then became a kiss-up after the headmistress of the school, Teacher Jones, crushed her spirit. There's a lot of corporal punishment in the school. There's a lot of like psychological punishment. And a lot of the book is about whether or not she's going to return to being rebellious. Topics that this book brought up are, what does it take to be revolutionary? That was something that I was really struck by. At the beginning, like this very young Arika, like maybe 6 years old or so, decides to protest something, and she jumps on the desk at school and says, "To me, comrades," and trying to rally up her peers. And to me, comrade is a word that has like a politic attached to it and like also a certain age. And so it's very interesting seeing this very young kid using it and thinking about, is there an age limit on being a revolutionary? Is it like just like a static thing? Like you do one thing and you're just considered revolutionary forever? Is it something that you have to change and evolve to maintain the label? Is it a useful label? I was thinking about the role of schools and revised histories and upholding the status quo, the importance of memory to identity, and to creating equity, creating family in like disruptive, violent environments, and the usefulness of divide and conquer tactics. From what little I did understand, I did enjoy it. And next up, I had been meaning to read something by Samuel R. Delany for a while, and so I made it a goal for 2020 to read Babel 17. And when I got it from my library, I didn't realize that Babel 17 in some editions was printed with Empire Star, so it was like these 2 novels in one. I think I started with Empire Star, which I think was a good place. Samuel Delany's writing is known for being like really dense, very difficult to understand, very literary, and there's definitely things about it that I still don't understand, and I want to do like a full video just like talking about my thoughts through it at some point. Yeah. I know I've said that for like 10 videos now, and most of them haven't seen the light of day, but like I'm actually serious about Empire Star. It's gonna happen. And then I read Babel 17. Babel 17 is about this linguist, Roger Wong, who has almost like precognitive abilities due to her knowledge of spoken language and body language. And it's about these terrorist attacks where all they know is that before the attack happens, they hear this strange language over the radio that no one has ever heard before. And so Roger Wong is tasked with uncovering what the language means so they can stop these attacks. This book was kind of trippy. I enjoyed the twists and turns and the journey. It was Rye just trying to uncover like what Babel 17 is and how to speak it, and sabotage attempts on her ship. Delany has kind of a dry humor, I think. Like I definitely saw it in Empire Star, and I think you do see it a bit here too. Like there's a scene with an assassin, especially, that I was like, this seems like a very specific Delany type of humor. So I enjoyed it. I liked it a little bit less than Empire Star, but I think it's also just because I didn't understand this one as much, and Like I said, my brain was kind of fried the month I was reading stuff, so like I didn't really have as much attention to give to it. I was just kind of trying to get through it and get it back to the library. And next up is Manifest by Terese Mason Pierre. This is a speculative fiction chapbook. I'm not really a poetry person. I don't really know how to talk about poetry. I'm just like, I like the vibes and the words are pretty. Like, I like this poem. I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot. I'm just going to say that I enjoyed it. There are a lot of sci-fi elements to it. Aliens. There is like a future where organic life doesn't exist anymore. There's like fantasy in terms of speaking to the dead. And last up is Love, Love, Fighting by Sharean Morishita. I won this in a Twitter giveaway from Mama Loves Manga, who is a great manga tuber that you should check out. This is like an adult manga. I really only read shoujo and shonen, so I don't really know the other, manga genres, but this is for adults, like a contemporary drama. It's about a Black Korean woman, Oriana, who moves from the US back to Korea to be with her family. Her mom's dead and her dad's neglectful, and she's going back to Korea to fulfill some familial obligations. Her cousin is trying to get Oriana to show business. Oriana's not big on it, but she wants to make her cousin happy, and she's dealing with people making snide remarks about her because she's Black, because of her size, and being home is also forcing some conversations about her family that she's been avoiding. While at this acting agency, Oriana runs into this Christian singer, Jaehwa, and sparks fly. In terms of what I thought of it, I really liked the art. All the characters had distinct designs. Their facial expressions were very expressive. Their personalities were all very different. I thought Morishita did a great job with the comedic reactions, like the outrage, the embarrassment, the shock, the fawning, cute moments. I really love the art of Oriana. I thought that was great, and especially when there's like little chibi moments to show people's reactions. I thought Oriana's were always like super duper adorable. Oriana's a protagonist who I thought was believable. She has like a fire in her, but she also has issues with prioritizing herself. So she kind of projects onto other people or gets like very emotionally invested in other people like very quickly. So for reference, she sees someone get bullied at the acting agency. She's known this person for 5 minutes. And she gets angry enough that she picks up a water cooler and throws it at the people bullying this person. Stuff like that, where it's like, I understand why you're doing what you're doing, but it's a lot, and I'm kind of worried for you. All in all, I thought the art was cute, but I don't think the story was for me. It is kind of a genre convention, in a drama, that things are going to be dramatic and heavy-handed, but for me, it wasn't really working. Like, some of the stuff with Oriana talking about how she was being treated at the ad agency felt like almost like after school special. The snide comments seemed believable, but in terms of the turnarounds, I guess, from like her talking to people about what they were saying, like the turnaround and getting people to stop that seemed like very rapid. And also just like in manga, it isn't weird to show these more extreme reactions, like, someone like trying to throw something at somebody and like, all their friends are holding them back. And for the people just kind of like glide past it like nothing's happening. But here it was like, I think it was jarring because like there was consequences for everything she was doing because she was actually doing it. Yeah, it was a fun read. Like I said, I really liked the art, but wasn't really my thing, So thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you've read anything, that I mentioned, please comment below. Or if you want to try and buddy read The Record Keeper by Agnes Gomillion, let me know. That's not going to be until like after summer. I have other stuff coming up that I think is going to take more of my attention, and I do want to take a hiatus at some point around then, so that would be like later in the year, but I'm down to coordinate that. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It's a good way to stay up to date with me and my bookish activities. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Goodbye.